You have heard it said, but I say to you.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a deep dive into a really profound theological shift. We're going to unpack a question that has literally fascinated scholars and believers for centuries. Did Jesus actually come to just abolish all those strict, rigorous rules of the Old Testament? Or was he doing something far more revolutionary? We're going to zoom in on the Sermon on the Mount, specifically Matthew 5, to see exactly how the law transformed from a mystery carved into stone into a revelation written right onto the human heart.
To kick things off, let's lay down a quick foundation. Drawing from the deep theological insights of the Ignatius Catholic Study Bible, we really need to look at the world of the Old Covenant, but through the revealing light of Jesus Christ. You see, the New Testament didn't just swap out the Old. It's more like it lifted a veil that had kept the Old Covenant hidden, suddenly charging the ancient world with this brilliant, unexpected grandeur.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with two mountains, two covenants, then move into fulfilling, not abolishing. After that, we'll explore Jesus, the new Moses, examine the six antitheses, and finally wrap things up with a law of the heart. All right, part one, two mountains, two covenants. We're starting our journey by looking at two monumental peaks in biblical history because they perfectly define two totally different eras of humanity. Picture this incredible contrast. First, you have Mount Sinai. Moses goes up to receive the law, but he brings it down the mountain to the people. St. Augustine pointed out something fascinating here. He noted that these were lower precepts meant for an earthly kingdom and given to a people who kind of needed the boundaries of fear. But now, contrast that with the Mount of Beatitudes. Here, the disciples are invited to go up the mountain to Jesus, who is sitting down in the posture of a rabbi, teaching with pure divine authority. These are higher precepts, meant for a heavenly kingdom, and given to people ready to be completely set free by love. You know, the Mosaic Law, especially in books like Deuteronomy, was incredibly outward-focused. It had a very specific job to govern the day-to-day temporal affairs of Israel. It was basically designed to maintain civil order and build a functioning nation-state. It acted like a societal boundary, a fence really, separating the Israelites from the sins of the surrounding nations. So it formed outward, virtuous citizens, sure, but it was always pointing towards something much, much greater.
Which leads us right into part two, fulfilling, not abolishing. So what actually happens to all those strict rules and outward boundaries when Jesus finally steps onto the scene?
Jesus actually tackles this tension point head-on. Right here in Matthew 5:17, speaking with absolute divine authority, he makes his mission crystal clear. It's about completion, not destruction. He says, "Think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them."
And the original Greek here is a total game changer. The word translated as fulfill literally means to make complete. So the new covenant doesn't just erase the old, it includes, perfects, and entirely transforms it. Now the old ceremonial laws like ancient sacrifices and purity rituals, yes, those expired with the sacrifice of Jesus. But the core moral law, the heart of the Ten Commandments, was completely retained and highly refined. It's no longer just about avoiding a bad action, it's about actively pursuing holiness.
Let's dive into part three, Jesus, the new Moses. To really grasp how Jesus upgrades the law, we have to look at how the biblical text masterfully sets him up as a parallel to the original lawgiver.
Okay, quick pause to talk about a concept called typology. It sounds super academic, but it's basically how God uses history like a giant interconnected puzzle. Typology is when a real person or event in the Old Testament foreshadows something far greater in the New Testament. God acts in these familiar, repeating patterns. He uses old truths to teach us about new, far more glorious realities. And the parallels here between Moses and Jesus are literally mind-blowing. Jesus perfectly fits the type of a new Moses, but he steps into the role with ultimate authority. Look at this. Both faced deadly threats from tyrants when they were babies. Both endured 40 days of fasting in the wilderness. Moses was the supreme lawgiver of the Old Covenant. Jesus delivers the new law at the Sermon on the Mount. And get this, Moses actually shows up in person at the Transfiguration to bear witness to Jesus' glory. Jesus isn't just repeating Moses, he is the prophet like Moses that the ancient texts promised.
All right, part 4, the Six Antitheses. This is where Jesus really flexes that new divine authority in a series of shocking teachings.
Let the sheer weight of this refrain sink in for a second. You have heard that it was said, but I say to you. Jesus repeats this exact pattern 6 times. He cites the old law, and then boom, he responds with his own overriding command. Jesus isn't just interpreting the law like a normal scribe or Pharisee. No way. He is personally overriding the civil codes of Sinai on his own authority.
Take one of the most famous examples, an eye for an eye. Originally, in Exodus, that rule was actually meant to limit revenge. The punishment simply had to fit the crime to ensure civil justice. But over time, people started using it to justify private, petty vengeance. Well, Jesus eliminates that misuse entirely. He replaces it with a completely new dimension of ungrudging generosity. You know the phrase, going the extra mile? That actually comes from Jesus talking about a Roman custom where soldiers could force you to carry their gear. Jesus is telling his followers, don't just do the bare minimum, go way past the call of duty. He strips retaliation out of the personal life completely.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, a law of the heart. So where does this new perfected standard actually live?
Think about the sheer scale of this shift. The Old Covenant, it was strictly national, just for Israel. But the New Covenant is international, encompassing everybody. The focus shifted from just outward civil behavior straight into the inward private life, and the end result is staggering. While the Old Covenant formed virtuous citizens of an earthly kingdom, the New Covenant generates saints for a heavenly one. The law expands outward to the whole world, but at the same time, it penetrates inward into the deepest parts of the human soul.
This is why this shift matters so profoundly. Jesus is bringing in a maximal standard of holiness. Holiness is absolutely no longer a checklist of boundaries. It's not just about avoiding murder anymore. It's about completely eliminating anger. It's not just about avoiding adultery. It's about eliminating lust. It's a massive maximal standard of mercy and righteousness that lives right inside you, governing your secret thoughts and your very heart.
So what does this all mean for us today? The Sermon on the Mount isn't just an ancient history lesson, folks. It's a mirror held right up to the soul. If the ultimate law is no longer just about what we do externally, but who we truly are in our hearts, how will you choose to live? I'll leave you to ponder that profound reality about your own interior life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this deep dive has sparked a whole new curiosity for you. Catch you next time.